Welcome to 45 Forward. I'm your host, Ron Roel. Now, for generations, we've thought about aging as a fairly predictable journey, a progression from adulthood into retirement and eventually older age. But what if aging today were no longer a single stage at all, but a series of dynamic transitions, not gradual decline, but a series that offers new possibilities for growth, purpose, and fulfillment? My guest today is Stuart Kaplan, one of the nation's leading thought leaders on aging, housing, and human services. As CEO of Selfhelp Community Services, one of New York's largest organizations serving older adults, Stuart oversees programs that help more than 25,000 seniors each year live with dignity, independence, and stability. Throughout his career, he's been at the forefront of innovations in aging services, affordable housing, aging in place initiatives, and policies designed to meet the needs of a rapidly changing older population. And now, Stuart is also the co-author of a new book, Your Aging Advantage: The New Stages of Aging. In it, he introduces a new framework for understanding the aging journey, a series of 7 distinct yet flexible stages of life, including what he and his co-author call the flicker stage, where our feels like age can move forward or backward, depending on our health, mindset, and engagement with life. We'll talk about what inspired this new model of aging, why practical planning matters more than ever, and what individuals, families, and society can do to help all of us thrive as we age. So now let's meet Stuart Kaplan. Stuart, welcome to 45 Forward.
Pleasure to be here with you, Ron. Thank you for having me.
Very good. So yeah, we have a lot to talk about. The first thing I want to talk about is basically, and just get right into the book, the title of the book, which first of all, I realized, first we're the aging advantage. Interesting choice of words, and I think that's obviously deliberate because I think the sort of normal, tradition has been, well, the aging disadvantage. Right? As you get older, you become more prone to a decline. So talk about how you chose that title.
Well, I think you put your finger on it, Ron. In society, we have seen aging as something, as a threat. We have seen it as something that we need to fix. We have seen it through a somewhat negative lens in many respects. The whole concept of ageism, which is one of the few isms still left and not addressed that we should address, but it has a negative connotation. And so Marcus Riley, my co-author on the book, and I believe that aging is an advantage for a variety of reasons, and that there are opportunities in aging, and given our longer lifespans, that that even underscores the reason why we should be seeking out the positive aspects and behaviors that we have access to and should utilize. But our society has not seen it as such, so you sort of have to pull back the curtain a little bit to actually realize that there are advantages in this thing called aging.
Yeah, and it's there every day. I mean, as we started the program for just before we started, I was relating an event of a conversation I had with a younger colleague, and she's middle age in the late 40s, and I'm several decades older, and she was talking to me about her life, and basically asking me for my thoughts, and from right that moment, I thought to myself, yes, there's an advantage to aging. I know things. I've been through things. I can mentor people. I can give them advice and help them understand what this process is about and what you can learn. They're just things when you're young you just don't know. You haven't lived through it, but there's a distinct advantage to aging in many ways. Um, so let's take just a step back and talk about how you got into this, initial, field actually, from because a lot of us, have influences early in life we don't even realize are going to shape things. But talk about some of your background and how you got into this.
So, as I have found over my career, now looking back, that many people enter the field of aging or other aspects of human services based on personal experiences.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it was a personal experience early on in my life, which had to do with my living with my grandparents. We lived next door to each other at my from when I was born, frankly,
Mm-hmm.
and through my teenage years, and always had built a respect and understanding, and was able to turn to them for questions and answers. But more than that, and more subtly, is just observe their behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And as they grew older, and older in those days was when they were about 60 years old,
Right.
62 years old, things that today we look at as, well, that's not old. But I saw them needing some assistance.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, I was about the age of graduating from college, my undergraduate work,
Mm-hmm.
and seeking a master's direction, and came upon a master's degree in business administration with a specialization in healthcare administration.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I began that program and undertook it. And as we went through it, I realized there were different opportunities in healthcare administration, be they insurance world, back in those days, HMOs, hospitals, long-term care, nursing homes. And so I selected out of the knowledge and experience I've had with my grandparents and their friends that, let me take a look at how we care for older people when they're in need.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And uh, while I learned much in those early days, I also found that the system could use some additional help.
Right.
So I,
A little bit of an understatement.
so I decided that I would go into the field of aging care and aging services with my management background, financial background, and apply it in a way that can benefit individuals as well as the overall system. And so that's how I pursued the aging field. For the last 25 years, I have been at an organization called Selfhelp Community Services as CEO, and Self-Help provides services that help people to live at home.
Mm-hmm.
So I have evolved over time from the stance of taking care of people or assisting people within the four walls of some sort of a facility-based care into recognizing that people want to be taken care of as they age
Right.
in their own home. And that is where I have settled with all of the services that self-help provides to enable people to remain in their own homes, including creating housing for them as well, because housing is the basis
Mm-hmm.
for the platform that allows you to provide services at home. So
Right.
my experience with my grandparents led to my interest in older adults, and here I am many years later.
Here you are. Yes. Yes. Many years. That good transition into the overall topic of longevity. 'Cause so we'll get into the seven stages, but just let's just back up a bit and talk about, because you do talk about it in the book, and it's an important factor, obviously, in the seven stages, but about the impact of longevity on our lives. And I think you've mentioned, and I totally agree, that one of the things is that they're changing expectations, greater expectations, if you will, of continuing a life, a purpose and quality, and activity every day. So in looking at some of the statistics, I didn't realize and think about it, but now we have an interesting, you know, combination of demographics. We have boomers, we have millennials, Gen Y, Gen Z, and they're actually all about 20% of the population. So we have an interesting mixture developing. So talk about how I know that that you and your colleague Marcus talked about in the book about, what the impact is of longevity on our expectations in life.
So, when I began, so back in the 60s, 70s, um, average age was about, or longevity was about late 60s, maybe 70 years old. That is a decade at least
Mm-hmm.
more now. And so adding those 10 years, how do we think about that? And while we know that because it's been reported widely that lifespan has extended due to medical technology, technological, and nutrition and exercise, and all of the things that we've been doing now. But what do we do with the fact that we have additional years in our life, vital years in our life,
Mm-hmm.
and while at the same time we still have a society that is somewhat stuck on
Mm-hmm.
for 65
Right.
as a milestone year, which dates back to the 1930s when the Social Security Act was created and created 65 as retirement age. Well, again, back in the 1930s, 40s, 50s, with lifespan being up to maybe 65, 68, 69, that was fine because the actuaries determined
Mm-hmm.
that 65 was the right age so that we could fund a program that would help people in their retirement,
Right.
but expecting they are only going to live for a few more years on average, those funds would be sufficient. Well, as we know, things have changed. There's been some inflation put to the dollars, but we haven't changed our expectations and reality in terms of lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
So now we have all of these additional years to live for the most part, and we should think about life differently. 65 should no longer be the number that we are shooting at, and that has
Mm-hmm.
societal implications and policy implications, financial implications, but it also has individual
Mm-hmm.
implications. And your aging advantage talks about what those implications are, and that's why we believe that we should be living life in stages as compared to just a linear progression leading up to age 65,
Right.
which some people then see as a cliff. We're going up, we're going
Right.
up, we're going up, and then
Right.
all of a sudden you hit 65, and the next day you feel like you're on the other side of the
Right.
of
Right.
Um, some people see that at age 50 or 60, but
Right. Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about that. But 65 is this magic number, and we use it for so many reasons in life. But we need to think much more expansively because it just doesn't bear reality today. And
Right. Right. So now I've talked about this notion with a number of other colleagues. Recently, with two of my colleagues, wrote a book called "The Aging Wisely Project," and so they take this similar notion of stages, and it's you talk about it in the book too. There a lot of some of this is takes a model of the Eric Erickson model of the stages
Mhm.
of human development, and so others of like my aging wisely colleagues talk about that okay, the 8 stages of development, and they talk about the ninth stage of adulthood. So that fits in with your idea, but you've taken it. You and Marcus have taken it a stage more, which is, and I think because it's not just again, it is this post 65, but you talk about it more in terms of transitional periods because, as we do know, even when you're in 65, very different from 75, 85, 95. So let's talk about the 7 stages and just do a quick synopsis of what they are, and as you've mentioned in the book, they're they're flexible,
Mhm.
and I notice when you sort of delineate the ages of each of these groups, they kind of overlap, so it's not
Very
like
important.
hard stops. So
Mhm.
let's just describe them quickly for our audience.
Sure. So that last point that you make is very important. So I will about the 7 stages,
Mm-hmm.
but what we have done to help people relate to the 7 stages is we have put age, chronological age frames
Mm-hmm.
as the guide marks for each stage, but those ages overlap. So what do I mean by that? Um, the first stage is, and we go from our stages cover the lifespan between 25 years of age to 100 plus.
Mm-hmm.
The first stage is young adult, where people are learning, not married yet, and we talk about that as being an age between 25 and 40. We move then into something we refer to as mid-adult, but the uh, ages for mid-adult are 30 to 60.
Mm-hmm.
So what's happening in mid-adult? That's where you are uh, becoming who you are, and your profession, your family. You may or may not be married at that stage. Again, the age range is 30 to 60, which I know sounds as a very broad stage, and we'll
Mm-hmm.
come back to that in a moment in terms of the flexibility. Then we go into a pre-transition stage, which is 50 to 75. Now, remembering that mid-adult went from 30 to 60,
Mm-hmm.
this is 50 to 60. So again, there's an overlap there, because reality is that regardless of what your chronological age is, people
Mm-hmm.
live life differently.
Right.
And it's the behaviors, and how you live in any one of these stages that defines the stage you are in, almost regardless of what the age is. But we
Mm-hmm.
realize age is happening at the same time as you're
Mm-hmm.
living stages, but there could be these vast differences between the way somebody who is 50 years old and in pre-transition behaves versus the way somebody who is 60 years old and pre-transition.
Mm-hmm.
So from pre-transition, we go to in-transition, and in-transition is when people are and the age range there is from 60 to 75. So this is
Mm-hmm.
when people are deciding, I've done what I am going to do work-wise, professional-wise. If I've been married, I've been married. Doesn't mean that I still can't
Mm-hmm.
marry for the first time or again, at this stage or a subsequent stage. But we take the, on the whole where a population is. And so
Mm-hmm.
people have enjoyed family or relationships, and children may be moving out if there are children involved, and your life is. So you're in transition, sort of wondering about, okay, between 60 and 75, where do I want to go with my life? And we talk about psychological factors, social factors,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
environmental factors, mental health factors. And so where do I want to go in my life? So we call that the in transition stage. And then the next stage, which again ranges from 65 to 85, broad range, again
Mm-hmm.
overlapping with the previous stage. That's what Marcus and I call the sweet spot.
Ah, nice.
Settled in. This is where you have accumulated um, knowledge, you have accumulated finances, or have not, but you know where you are, and something dramatic is less likely to happen
Mm-hmm.
at that stage. So, not that it can happen, but something is less like, and you are settled in. You know where your family is, you know what brings you joy, you know where you'd like to live. Now, you may not be there yet, but you know what who you are and what you want to be. People sometimes express it as I feel more free in,
Mm-hmm.
as I get older, because I feel like it doesn't matter as much what people are thinking. It's more about who I am and what I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
We
Mm-hmm.
call that the settled in stage, a very sweet spot. The fourth stage is the next stage. Sorry, is a recognition that there are setbacks in life sometimes, certainly from a health standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
We call it supported living. So this is where something has occurred. It could be a mental health thing, it could be a divorce, it could be family circumstances, could be children moving out, um, it could be frailty, and we put that between age 70 and 90. So you can go all the way up, and now we're getting close to that 100 mark uh,
Mm-hmm.
in the supported living. And you need some sort of support. It may be outside help, it may be interpretive help with who you are and what you want to be, or it could be a medical condition, a chronic condition, where you need to pay attention to this so that you can continue to live your life as you want. And the last stage is called elder, and elder is that wisdomic phase
Mm-hmm.
where people hopefully will be living. It could overlap very much so with supported living, or it could stand by itself, and that goes from 85 to 100 plus.
Right. Yeah.
So, with all of that, and I know it's hard for the audience to capture all of those stages all at once, but the important parts to know is there are stages that we go through,
Mm-hmm.
and we live those stages based on what we refer to as our feels like
Mm-hmm.
age.
Mm-hmm.
And our feels like age is why we have those big ranges for each of
Right.
the stages. Because if you ask somebody how old are they, if I ask the first question and people don't know where I'm going with it, the the answer is I am 45 years old. I say, oh, thank you very much. And the next question is, how old do you feel? And typically, people always take a breath at that point because they're not ready for that question.
Mm-hmm.
But they realize its importance because we have all said at some point in our lives, I'm X years old, but I feel typically 10 years to 15 years younger.
Right.
And immediately your mind can bring you back to 10 or 15 years younger. And then you begin to relate stories and you could just see the person going back to,
Right.
that age in life. There are some times where people feel older as well because of things that there are positive or negative aspects to that. It might be because of an ailment and you're
Mm-hmm.
feeling older, or it might be at younger stages when somebody is 25 or 30 years old and very progressive. They want to be in the mix with the
Mm-hmm.
45-year-olds, the 50-year-olds,
Mm-hmm.
the more successful
Right.
folks that they see. So they're trying to behave or act older. I mean, we see that sometimes when guys grow beards or
Mm-hmm.
mustaches, so that you're looking a little bit older because you want to mix in with the group that you want to mix in. So it does go both ways, and we
Right.
refer to that as the feels like age, and then based on behaviors, you can actually flicker into
Mm.
these stages, which is a cool concept as well.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think that, when you do ask that question that you just mentioned, I think people do hopefully think of themselves as, feels like 10 years younger than they are. Although there are some days that you say you get up and go like, oh, I feel 10 years older than I am.
Hmm.
Um, but I do think that's an important notion that people um, need to wrap their head around in terms of how to move forward, and if you feel a certain age or you're going through certain things you didn't expect, how should you respond to that? Um, so I think that one of the things in terms of your overall goal, which I think is to help people thrive no matter what their age, and to think about what want their older life to be like. Um, so one of the things that I talk about quite a bit in my own particular niche, which is family caregiving, is certain things come up, as you point out, you can't control. You got to live through them. But there are many things you can control, and there are many things that you should think about, and you can. Many aspects of thriving really require some planning. So, my one of my phrases is, plan but don't predict. Okay, but plan. If you have no plan, you can't. Predictions don't do any good. So, you do talk a lot about planning, and the goal of, essentially, as you put it, is helping people put control back in the hands of all of us as we get older. Um, so let's now talk about it, because a lot of the book, and I'm going to just hold up the book here so people can see it. Here it is, The Aging Advantage. Obviously, I have a copy. And so let's talk about, now we have 7 stages, and then throughout those stages, you talk about the 8 steps of planning. So let's just run through those quickly, because I think these are interesting, because they're not just one-time things. As you go through each stage, you look at where you are in your planning stages and how to do that. So let's run through the big 8.
Sure. So, planning is one of the things that the majority of people don't do.
Right.
One, out of nature, many people don't like to plan. But what are you doing on Saturday? What are you doing next month? I didn't get the next Saturday. I don't know. So planning is not something that we do. When it comes to aging, it's even more so, because there's a lot to consider in thinking about planning. So the first stage is think about planning.
Mm-hmm.
Think about what it means to plan, to sort of set goals, to talk about steps toward achieving those goals, or, who your family, your friends, how you live, the overall, how the gestalt, if you will, of
Mm-hmm.
how you live. And we refer to how you live as aging on pace.
Mm.
Concept we have in the book, and it's about how people live. So in order to consider how you're living and how you want to live, we go through the planning process. So first, think about planning. Then what you want to do is dream a little bit. Okay, this is your plan. You're
Mm-hmm.
allowed to dream, right? You're allowed to be aspirational
Mm-hmm.
about the plan. It doesn't have to be, I just need to get to Saturday. It might be, where do I want to be in 5 years? And so if we put a time frame of multiple years out there, it allows people to think more. It takes away oh, it's going to be hot next week, or coming up on the summer. So you think about it in very pedantic ways. Think about 5 years out. What,
Mm-hmm.
what would your planning like to be? How would you like to live? And then you set some goals toward that. That's a third stage. You set goals toward it. And in establishing goals, you can have one big goal, or you can have multiple goals. You don't have to achieve everything all at once. So you
Right.
begin to make choices. Whether it's the big goal or
Mm-hmm.
multiple goals, you begin to make choices along the way, which involve, again, your finances, your working situation, your family, your friends, um, the location, your environment, where you are living. All of those can fit into
Mm-hmm.
a planning process, and through the book, we talk about them. And so some of the big questions are those areas. Am I going to continue working at age 50?
Mm-hmm.
Am I going to continue working at 65? Am I going to continue working? Period.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not setting a time frame on it. Um, do I want to continue living in this environment? So those are big questions, and finances are important to that. So I don't want to minimize or say each of these has equal weight. They are considerations that you are asking, but finances is a big one, because finances controls in many respects what some of your decisions or some of your choices can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you then make those decisions based on multiple goals or one large goal. If it's one large goal, I would recommend that you break it into smaller pieces.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your goal is to climb Kilimanjaro, it's a fair goal. It's something you've always wanted to do, but you haven't gone up a flight of steps, in the last 3 months. So you break it into smaller goals. If it's Kilimanjaro, okay, we need to start to work out a little bit. We need to train, and so
Mm-hmm.
for the next 6 months, I'm going to go up steps, and 6 months later, I'm going to, run 2 miles. But So break it into smaller goals, and then you take action, and that's step 7. You begin to implement your goals,
Mm-hmm.
and step 8 is you're always reviewing it again.
Mm-hmm.
So once you've begun to achieve, you assess, well, am I able to achieve that goal? Am I not? I did achieve that goal. Well, what should I be doing? Should I go through the process
Mm-hmm.
again?
Mm-hmm.
And so you're always reassessing. And this, the planning process is not a one and done.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The planning process is something that I would say every year or
Mm-hmm.
so, again, depending on goals, depending on who you are and what your goals are, um, you want to reassess your
Mm-hmm.
based on life circumstances or just based on time frame. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the process of planning, and we just don't do it enough.
Right.
Going back to the fact that life is longer
Mm-hmm.
these days, it's important to plan and to plan further ahead so that you are not in that mindset of I am coming up on retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Retirement is a word we don't use a lot in the book because we don't believe it carries the same weight
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
note that it used to carry. There are
Right.
people that retire at age 50 these days, and
Mm-hmm.
there are people who retire at 80, and there are
Mm-hmm.
people who don't retire. We
Mm-hmm.
all know people who are 80 years old or 90 years old, maybe not doing what they did when they were 50.
Mm-hmm.
So again, we tie retirement to a uh, work,
Right.
a more specific uh, area of work in our lives. But okay, if you retire from that job, you've retired from that job, but you
Mm-hmm.
didn't retire from life.
Right.
And
Right.
people somehow equate retirement and life
Mm.
as linked closely. They
Right.
don't need to be.
Right. Right. Now the book is also filled with lots of stories of examples of people. Um, uh, how did you find these stories, and any that you can come to mind as particularly interesting examples?
So these stories are Marcus and I sat down and when we were writing the book and thought about stories and then thought about people who we have come across in our lives,
Mm-hmm.
our professional or personal lives, and we built stories around those people.
Mm-hmm.
So these aren't direct interviews with these individuals.
Mm-hmm.
These are more a collection of what Marcus and I have thought about and that fit the stages of aging concepts. And so you have the story of a wife and husband who are um, you know moving along at the same pace all along, and all of a sudden one of them has a medical setback,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one becomes a caregiver. Totally new world that this couple has entered into and needs to address,
Mm-hmm.
usually without any knowledge or training ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
So their life, in terms of stages, moves ahead into the stage in this example of supported living because
Mm-hmm.
somebody is in need of help and somebody is helping to give care. However, through the caregiving process, the spouse who uh, fell somewhat ill is able to recover, and all of a sudden they flicker from settled in, flicker from supported living, perhaps back to settled in, or even all the way back to in transition, again, based on their life circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So it is experiences like that. We
Mm-hmm.
have experiences with, the younger children who need to make decisions with their family
Right.
because they've moved into a supported living stage. On the other hand, we've got examples of somebody who's coming up on age 60 and is wondering, is 65 an important um, number for me? Should I be
Mm-hmm.
thinking about, and what should I be doing? I've always wanted to live out in the country, and I've had an urban environment. So we give an example of an individual who is coming up on that life stage and making, doing some planning, and then making small choices so that they can move along toward where they would like to be,
Mm-hmm.
aging on pace, how they want to live life 5 years hence.
Right, right. So, as you know, my particular niche on 45 Forward is also family caregiving. I have a guide, family caregiving navigator. So there are very interesting similarities with what you talk about, as mentioned, in terms of the importance of planning, because most people don't plan broadly as you talk about, and especially they don't want to think of themselves as perhaps requiring some sort of assistance later, and so they don't think about it at all. And the longer you don't think about it, the fewer options you have. Um, so, I think that the notion of planning but also the reality that, we don't, no one trains you in caregiving. No one trains you in what you're talking about. And so, when I was looking at your book, I said, look, it's a little bit of a stretch to call about caregiving, but in fact, your philosophical approach really is about caring for ourselves as a society. How do we care for um, people as they get older? We don't have a plan for that. So, I think about your book really broadly as you're caring about us all as we get older. So, just as you think about it, did any lessons emerge about what things we need to change? This could be another whole podcast because I know that you're very involved in the policy area. But some thoughts about what the things we need to do differently in terms of structure or process or systems.
Yes. Um, we have built the support systems for caregiving in a very fragmented way over
Mm-hmm.
decades. And so much has changed in terms of resources and our abilities, technology. Um, and so there are multiple resources out there.
Mm-hmm.
But as you just cited, nobody trains us for what do we do
Mm-hmm.
if we need those resources. So number one, we don't even know that they exist, and
Mm-hmm.
yet resources do exist. As as a policy matter, we've built these resources in silos.
Mm-hmm.
They don't necessarily relate to each other, and you now have an individual family member who needs some sort of assistance because they become the caregiver. They are the ones who are physically in the home and are seeing what the needs of an individual um, needs to support them.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't know how to access the resources. So, at a policy level, the person who or individuals who I think are most important are experts in the field of caregiving and access. So
Mm-hmm.
access to services, people, and there are experts, just as there are experts. If you have a legal matter, you go to an attorney as an expert
Mm-hmm.
who has studied and understands the laws. If you need financial help, you go to a financial planner.
Mm-hmm.
These people exist. You will just, to put them into the phone. You will find a list of them, more than you care to see.
Mm-hmm.
So why is it that we as a society don't recognize, haven't highlighted the fact that there are experts in caregiving who understand what resources are out there and how
Mm-hmm.
to access those resources? And I know because I've looked at your book, you detailed that, and it's excellent. I commend everybody to be looking at it and reach for resources that already exist to help you as a caregiver. Then there's the whole aspect of emotional support and
Mm-hmm.
the knowledge and the finances. But these experts can help you put all of that together specific to your individual or family situation. It's
Right.
so important. And as a policy matter, we should look at a whole of aging
Mm-hmm.
approach as compared to the component parts that each citizen needs to put together by themselves. And here comes the blockbuster. It happens at a time of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
It's not we here we are talking about let's plan, let's look 5 years out, let's
Right.
be thoughtful about what we're doing, let's adjust it as necessary. When one becomes a caregiver, typically, Ron, it happens at a time of crisis.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have time to think about, let me look up, who could do this. Let me find out where the finances are. And so policy, society can help shape that.
Mm-hmm.
All kinds of public messages
Right.
and public policy and financing. The Medicare system is one of the problems that we have. While it's a tremendously wonderful benefit in the U.S., it doesn't pay for certain things, but people think that it pays
Right.
for caregiving as we're talking about it. And honestly, it really doesn't, but in some instances where it pays for things for a short period of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you cannot just dial 1-800
Right.
Medicare
Right.
and say, could you please help me with my caregiving needs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we can spend a whole other podcast talking about a lot of these issues, and we will at some point.
That would be wonderful.
But I want to thank you for these insights, and I guess my last question is just if you wanted our listeners and viewers to or take away one thing from your book, what would that be?
Great question. I would say live your feels like age
Mm-hmm.
and recognize that there are stages to aging and you can have control over what stage you are living in, both from a chronological standpoint, but most importantly, from a feels like perspective.
Great. Okay. So, if people want to contact you, Stuart or Marcus, and find out more about the book, about your work, or you might be doing also other podcasts and presentations, how do people get in touch with you?
So the book can be found at youragingadvantage.com,
Great. Okay.
and I can be contacted at
Hmm.
selfhelp.net.
Great. Okay. All right. Well, again, thanks for a great program, and I look forward to continuing our conversation. So, thank you, Stuart.